My name is Julie McDonough. I'm with Bremer Bank, and I am your co-host this morning and the co-host of the Good Leadership Breakfast Series. And now I get to introduce my friend. He is the creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast. Please welcome Paul Botts.
Thank you. When I talk about goodness, what we really think about is this idea that as a leader, you can create a culture where people actually have care and concern for each other. I think the opposite of goodness is superheroes who have a short-term mindset. It causes us to do all sorts of goofy things as leaders that might not actually look or feel like goodness. As we transition now to our speaker, I want you to think about the last time you visited a hospital. I want to introduce you to just an absolutely beautiful person who's a wonderful leader who really knows how to make the teamwork dance in a hospital sing. Please join me in welcoming Megan Remark.
Thank you, Paul. That was probably the nicest introduction anyone's ever given me, so I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you this morning. As Paul said, when he and I first met, I had just accepted the position as president of Regions Hospital, but I hadn't moved into the role officially yet. And being the planner that I am, when he and I sat down for our first meeting, I said, well, Paul, I've been with Health Partners for over 20 years, and I've been a leader at Regions for over 10. So this coaching stuff, we'll just be together about a year, right? That I know what's happening. I know the culture of the organization. I know a lot about the team. And I saw Paul looking at me inquisitively. He's looking at me, and he's like, well, and this was classic. He said, well, Megan, you can just hear him. Let's see how it goes. Because most people that move into jobs like yours find that it takes upwards of 3+ years to feel confident and comfortable in these types of jobs. Well, of course, I looked at him and I went, 3 years. Okay, in 3 years, my son will be done with middle school. My daughter will be a senior in high school. And I said to Paul, I need to be effective in this job and have work-life balance with my family at this time in our lives. I need to be good at both those things now. I can't wait 3 years. A little bit of the overachiever in me. And so we set our sights on a new goal. Actually, the new goal for me was, let's not worry about how long you might be spending in coaching. Let's worry about partnering together to be the most effective leader I can be and be there for my family. And so that's where we set our sights on. So a little bit about my background. I moved to Minnesota 30 years ago to go to graduate school. I thought I'd be here 2 years max, and you'll hear why in just a minute. But I had the good fortune of doing what was then called the dual degree program at the University of Minnesota. I got my master's in health administration from the School of Public Health, and I got my MBA at the Carlson School. And with Minnesota's reputation for amazing healthcare, I got a great job out of grad school. I went to work. My very first job out of grad school was at Park Nicollet, and I decided to make Minnesota my home. I have had a handful of really amazing colleagues and mentors that have really influenced my leadership style, and quite frankly, I'm indebted to several of them for just helping me be a better person. And although all of that is great, probably the best reason that I'm grateful for having moved to the state of Minnesota is because I met my husband, Roger. We've been married 21 years, and he just radiates goodness. He's just a great guy. And he's made work-life balance really easy, and I've just been really blessed with a great partner. So as I think about my life up to this point in my career, I really realized that probably the first and best mentors that I had were my parents. I was thinking about this through the lens of the fact that neither one of them are here anymore. They've both passed away. But I will forever be grateful for the fact that they were just such big supporters of mine and really my #1 fans. And I think those of you who are parents can relate to this. I hope my husband and I both hope that we're providing those same gifts to our children as well. I'm the youngest of 3 and the only girl in the family. I have 2 much older brothers, which I'm sure when they see this will say, great, much older brothers. But they were more like fathers to me, and I'm still in touch with them and really know that I can call on them and rely on them if I ever need anything. So I feel very fortunate about that. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and yes, people are actually born in Las Vegas. Which is why you can see when I first thought about moving to Minnesota, everyone was like, what? You're moving to Minnesota? Why would you do that? But I've grown to love the 4 seasons, and it's just been a treat to live here in Minnesota. I recognize that I am who I am today in large part because of my parents. My father was raised during the Depression, and he was a World War II vet. Larry was his name, and he was probably one of the happiest people that I have ever known. He was an optimist. He valued what he had. He didn't live with any regrets. And from my dad, I really learned the power of having a great work ethic, of always showing up, of living in the moment. And probably the best lesson my father taught me was to savor the great times so that you were storing up that energy to help you through the challenging times. My mom, Betty, was a great person. She was a school teacher, actually at a vocational high school, for kids who knew they probably weren't going to be able to go to college or weren't interested in college, but wanted to have some marketable skills right out of high school that would be appealing to employers. And my mom loved being a teacher, and she was really good at it. What I also am reminded about, and I remember having several conversations, or she was having a conversation with me about this, about the fact that although she enjoyed what she did, she felt like when she got her education, there were very few choices for women in her generation. And her message to me was, the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you set your mind to, and don't let anybody define a box for what you should do or shouldn't do. And while it was my mother's influence that first got me interested in healthcare when I was in college, it was really my father's experience in healthcare that I think planted the seed for the healthcare profession that I love the most. And so I want to share with you a little bit about Larry's story. When I was 10 years old, my father was seriously burned in an accident at work. And back then, kids weren't allowed, I was 10, so kids weren't allowed in the intensive care units. And so my father was making it a priority to have the team wheel him out into the lobby, into the hallway, so that I would have a chance to see him during his recovery. We don't do that anymore in hospitals, by the way. We want to make sure our families all get to stay together with their loved ones. But I distinctly remember sitting on this bench and seeing my dad wrapped in bandages. He had third-degree burns on his face, his arms, and his hands. And in typical Larry Miller style, he was worried about me and wanting to make me feel confident or comfortable, and wanting to make sure I knew that he was going to be okay. Now, one of the things that my dad loved the most on a day-to-day basis was, because he worked outside as an electrician. In Vegas, it's hot. Every day he savored that moment where he got to crack that cold can of beer and have a beer after work. And so when my father was hospitalized, one of my distinct memories was that those 2 older brothers of mine, with I think the help of some of the staff, snuck in beer with a straw, because he couldn't yet drink beer out of a can directly. And so I just have these memories of straws in their pockets, and they're bringing the beer in, and I just have this picture in my head that the staff just looked the other way, because of course beer is the last thing you should probably be drinking when you're in the hospital. And that story for me, when I think about those 2 snapshots, really resonated with me about the fact that if the staff had anything to do with it, it was because they knew that those 2 things, having this father see his 10-year-old daughter and having those brothers provide him that beer, were providing just a little bit of comfort and a little bit of hope that things were going to get back together. And I think for me that lesson is, it's the small things not just the big things that make a really big difference. Now, one of the things that I continued to hear as I was early in my career is that you learn more from your mistakes than you do your wins or your victories. And I am really glad about the fact that I learned some of my biggest lessons, some of my biggest mistakes early in my career. And as I talk with new young leaders, I say, try and make sure you're taking as much advantage of your youth as possible on a small stage to fail fast, to learn from it, and to be able to make sure that you can continue to grow and expand as a leader. And so one of the first jobs I took before I came to Health Partners was a clinic manager position. I later figured out I was probably the youngest person in the clinic, and of course it was my very first kind of official leadership role. And I knew that there were going to be some challenges because I was the second or third clinic manager in about 3 or 4 year period, so there had been a lot of turnover. And there wasn't a lot of accountability, there wasn't a lot of structure in the role, and so my job was to help get the clinic back on track. So I had a lot of great ideas, and I started implementing those. Only very soon into my tenure to find out that the staff really weren't loving all the things that I had in mind for this clinic. And they actually called Human Resources and said, quote, "We don't think this manager's really working out." So one day I got a call from Human Resources and said, tomorrow, actually, there's 2 of us that are coming out at the request of the staff to hear their grievances about the fact that they don't really like what you're doing and they're not really interested in having you continue as their clinic manager. Well, you can imagine. I was devastated. Oh, and by the way, and you need to leave the building when we're having this conversation. So I was like, okay. I left the building. I had lunch by myself. And I came back after and had a conversation with Human Resources. And the director actually led this conversation, I think, in a really compassionate way, which is another lesson in and of itself. And she said, okay, Megan, what you're doing needs to happen. We need to have this clinic perform at a different level. But how you're going about it is not allowing the team you're working with to really hear the change through that lens of encouragement. So you're talking at people as opposed to talking with people. And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I really wasn't leading through that lens of goodness. So I did some reflection and I hit the reset button. And I was pretty humble with the staff. I had a conversation with them about the fact that I wanted us to really partner together to make great things happen at this clinic. And I did a lot less talking, and I did a lot more listening about what was working and what wasn't working, about what we could agree to do together to advance the organization. And so I won back their trust, and I was able to stay a clinic manager in that location for a little over 3 years. And there's a term in the book on Goodness Pays about it's about we, not me. And I feel like that was a lot of what I learned in that first job. I have been with Health Partners for 24 years, and I've had 4 different distinct leadership roles during that time. Now, I never expected to work in any one organization for as long as I have, but those opportunities and challenges that I wanted to pursue always seemed to present themselves at the right time and at the right place within Health Partners. Having said that, not all of those opportunities were promotions. A lot of them were accepting new challenges around new initiatives or key projects, mobilizing teams from across the entire organization, just not in my unit. And I really encourage people to not just look at advancement or career opportunities through the lens of promotions or title or pay, but to look either internally or externally for opportunities to expand your knowledge, become a better person, diversify your portfolio. And one of the things that I inherited when I became the president at Regents Hospital was I inherited a really amazing leadership team. And a few years ago, we set our sights on being what we call a gold medal team. So what's a gold medal team? Well, it's achieving outstanding results and doing it in a really effective way for the benefit of our patients, for the benefit of our employees, for our colleagues across all of Health Partners that we work with, as well as for ourselves. And we identified a couple of characteristics that for us would make sure we could stay on track to becoming that gold medal team. And I want to share with you just a couple of those initiatives. The first is that we agreed as a leadership team that we would always lead with appreciation and that we would share success stories broadly. There was one of my mentors early on said, no one ever says, please stop appreciating me. I've really just heard it enough. I know I'm great, and we don't even have to talk about it anymore. So we realized that we can't appreciate enough, and particularly when we know we have 4,700 employees at Regions Hospital, you want to spread the love as far and wide as you possibly can. Second is, we agreed that we would stay focused on rewarding results and not just effort. And that was a big deal for us, because a lot of times we would hear from teams and we would talk about all of the great efforts, but we weren't moving in the direction that we needed to move in from a goals perspective. The third is to make sure that we as leaders were encouraging healthy tension throughout the entire organization, that the leader doesn't always have the right answer, and that how do we make it okay at any place within the organization to raise your hand and either stop the line from a safety perspective or to say, you know what, I think we can get a better result by doing something differently. So inserting healthy tension in not just boardrooms and official meetings, but having people know that they can walk up and have a conversation and give a suggestion. And that has really helped us quite a bit. Fourth is leading with facts and not emotion and not anecdotes. How many times as a leader have we heard one side of the story and started going down a path only to find out there's 2 or 3 other versions and that you'd really like to hear the whole surround sound before you make a decision? So that's been something that we've been really focused on. And last but not least is to recognize that Regions Hospital is not an island, that we work within a very big organization that does a lot of great work, and that we need to be there for our partners across the entire Health Partners organization to make care simple and affordable for our patients for that lofty goal. I continue to work at Regions Hospital and Health Partners because I believe in the Health Partners mission, and that mission is to improve health and well-being in partnership with our members, our patients, and our community. I believe in the culture, I believe in the values, and I do believe in that lofty goal to make healthcare more simple and affordable. One of the things that I love about the definition of goodness, and so Paul's got it right up here, goodness, when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork, is the fact that each of us as leaders need to recognize that goodness starts with us. It starts with us as leaders. How I talk, how I behave, how I respond under pressure, how I react in a crisis should all be through the lens of goodness. And it's not about being nice. It's about being clear and accountable. It's about accepting and admitting when I've made a mistake. And it's about engaging not just with the other leaders in our organization, but spending time rounding and talking with and being among all of our employees. So there's nothing I love more than to really have a great conversation with our teams and find out what's working and what's really not working. And if there's one message I'd like to leave you with today, it's that the fact that if you don't see goodness in your boss or in your organization, that you can create goodness where you're at, no matter where you are in the organizational chart. And that people want to follow an organization where they believe in the mission and they feel valued and supported. And that comes directly from their supervisors and from their bosses. Healthcare is a challenging field. For many of you, actually, there's a few of you here today in the healthcare business. And for us, it's highly regulated. There's a lot of external pressures, both at the state and the federal level. And for a lot of the not-for-profit sector, like hospitals and clinics and other smaller not-for-profits, we manage on really small margins, really razor-thin margins. And so as a result, we ask a lot of our teams. We are simultaneously working hard to always improve care, to always improve the patient and family experience, and to continue to try and reduce costs. And it's a team sport. In a hospital, for example, we have estimated that in a 3-day hospital stay, a patient will interface with at least 100 employees. That's hundreds of moments of truth. And we talk about the fact that all it takes is one of those moments of truth to fail, to erode trust and confidence in the care we're providing, even though it may have just been one bad experience. So that's a pretty high bar when you think about it. And our team has really been focused on how we contribute to the resiliency of our employees. Because at Regents Hospital, we are a level 1 trauma facility that's also a safety net. We're focused on taking care of everyone regardless of their ability to pay. And I'm proud to say we have 4,700 people that run to trouble, not away from it. And that takes a lot of energy. And we want people to stay in healthcare for a lifetime, and building in resilience and the opportunity to have new challenges and advancement is really important for anyone, but particularly important in healthcare because we want people to be able to spend their lifetime in that career. In close, I just wanted to share a story that I heard from one of our patients. One of the things that I really appreciate the most is having the opportunity to talk directly to patients and their families about the care they're receiving. And one night I was leaving the office and I was headed towards the elevators, and I ran into a man and his wife who were looking for the same elevators I was walking to. And he had an unusual bandage on his arm that went all the way up on his shoulder, all the way down over his hand. And I soon learned that he was in an automobile accident where he was minding his own business and he was hit from behind. He was in his truck, and at the time that the truck rolled off the side of the embankment, he had his arm out the window. And so his arm was pinned underneath the truck. And he came pretty close to losing that arm and had many, many surgeries and many stays at Regents. And I think what I had figured out was they had come for an outpatient PT visit, and he was walking very gingerly. And he was pretty emotional, and he stopped me right in the hall, even before we were walking to the elevators, and he said, "I want you to know 2 things. Number 1 is that your trauma team and your emergency department saved my life. And the staff on the inpatient unit saved my spirit when there was times I thought I couldn't go on." And it's stories like that. At Regions, we see the unexpected and the tragic every day. But we also get to deliver babies and be there when people find out that they're in remission for cancer. And it's stories like that that bring me all the way back to my first job at the VA. Healthcare's personal, and everybody wants just another day to feel better, to feel valued, to be productive. And that's why I think goodness pays. So I appreciate all of you listening to my journey of leadership and how I'm trying to use goodness to make us all better, because healthcare needs to be better and healthcare needs to be simple and more affordable. So with that, I'm looking forward to more conversation.
Thank you. Megan, we talked about your team. You have the largest team that I work with. Yeah. Can you explain what a hospital president team looks like and explain why all these people are on your team?
Sure. Mm-hmm. What I love about the Health Partners organization is that we are highly accountable as a leadership team, and we have a matrix management approach. And so, as Paul said at the beginning of his part of the conversation, that hospitals are really complex, and we probably have 200, 500, maybe more job descriptions of different kinds of people that come together to take care of patients. And so our leadership team is so large because we are trying to be as efficient as possible. And so someone might run laboratory for all 6 hospitals, and we want that person to have a touch point with us once a month. So once a month we have our expanded leadership team, which is about 25 individuals, mm-hmm. and it also includes a significant number of physicians. So we're engaging our physician leaders in the process as well. Mm-hmm. So that's why there's so many.
Yeah, and it functions beautifully too, which is really awesome. We've done some leadership retreats together, and the 7 Fs are a really big part of that. Tell us, how are the 7 Fs alive in your leadership?
I would say the 7 F's are alive in my leadership because I think I look at things through the lens of people's whole being and not just their work being. And we've been working as a team to recognize that among each other, and then I think that actually helps us recognize it with the people that report to us. So knowing that people spend more of their day at work than anywhere else, but that work isn't the only thing that matters. And so the 7 F's have kind of helped us remember that, that it's more than just work-life balance. And when Paul talks about the fact that it's hard to perform well in your job if there are other things going on in your life, we've been trying to incorporate that into even thinking about things like, let's be focused and let's have timelines and make sure that we're taking new initiatives in bite-sized pieces, that we're not overloading at any one period of time and burning people out. And so 7 F's kind of goes hand in hand with that.
All these young people that go through the hospital through either the MHA program or something like that, all those youngsters that want your job someday, what's the advice that you give them?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. My number one message is don't be in such a hurry. I think everybody wants that title. It's why most people that go into this profession have come out with a master's degree and feel like you really want to start making that difference. But I mentioned it in my talk a bit. I feel like you need to really experiment on a smaller stage. That I've seen people advance too quickly, and then when you make a big mistake, you're on a bigger stage, and then that's your reputation, as opposed to learning it when you're a supervisor or a manager on a smaller stage and being able to kind of hone your leadership skills. So my best advice is not be in too big of a hurry.
Let's circle back to your belief system about goodness. I'm really fascinated to ask people and to hear their answer to this question. Is there a specific moment when you look back on your leadership where you can say, yep, that's a proof point that goodness really does pay?
I'm actually going to share an example that's recent because I didn't have the words for goodness until recently. And we had a situation where we had a really challenging family and patient situation in our mental health unit. And the family was being very disrespectful to the staff and very threatening. And we had a team of folks that huddled up because the situation had escalated to a pretty scary point. And we spent probably 6 or 7 phone calls over a 2-day period. And I just continued to think that the way in which we handle this is going to determine the outcome. And so I led through a lens of goodness and said, how can we make it possible for these family members to still see their loved one and keep our staff safe? And that was a really uncomfortable space for our team to be in, because the first thing you want to do, of course, and I want to do as well, is to just say, sorry, nobody can visit anymore. We're not going to allow that. And our team worked really hard and really creatively, and I was really proud of the leadership team who interfaced with this family and set up some structure. And we got that family back reunited with their loved one. And I think at the end of the day, we were all really proud that we led with goodness when we could have just led with anger or protectiveness alone. And I think the staff felt supported as well, because it's what we would want if we were in those situations. So
beautiful. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Please say your appreciation for Megan.